Make sure you guys hit the subscribe button if you guys are enjoying the content that we're throwing up. And make sure you guys hit the like button if you enjoy the video. And yeah, let's begin. Okay, so we are getting into the challenge of the Ghost Rider storyline for the Avengers. Here's the thing, Jason Aaron's run on the Avengers is really, really cool. But the funny thing about this is that Jason Aaron's run has served two purposes so far. It's to either kind of go towards what it is that Marvel wants to do in the MCU or to play cleanup duty. The idea was with Blade coming in, that was designed to kind of bring Blade more into the forefront because as we know, Blade is going to be in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The other thing about this is that with regards to this story and the story of Robby Reyes, this is cleanup duty. And the reason why is because back in 2015, when Robby Reyes, the whole all new Ghost Rider concept came along, with issue number 7, he met Johnny Blaze, who of course was probably the most popular version of Ghost Rider outside of Danny Ketch. And then in turn, the question was asked, well, is he a Ghost Rider or is he not a Ghost Rider, right? Because Robby Reyes was never possessed by a spirit of vengeance. He was possessed by the spirit of his uncle Eli Morrow, who is basically a dick. And so because of that, he initially didn't have things like the penance stare and stuff like that, right? The ability to look into a person and make them feel all the pain they'd ever caused over the course of their lives. Now, that changed by Marvel Legacy number 1 insofar as he got that ability by that point in time. But the biggest struggle with Robby Reyes in terms of how he fits into the Ghost Rider mythos up to this point has been, is he Ghost Rider or is he not a Ghost Rider? Where does he stand on this? And so this basically clears all that up, which is a long time coming, to be honest. But what it does is it basically picks up with Robby Reyes hanging out with his younger brother Gabe. Now, of course, for those of you guys who are unfamiliar with this, Gabe is really the only member of the family that Robby Reyes has left, right? That's really the only thing he has in the world. For the most part, it's always been one of these things where Robby looked out for Reyes as best he could. Now, him engaging in some pretty nefarious actions ultimately led to his demise, which led to the spirit of Eli Morrow offering the possession to Robby Reyes, which he accepted, and then him going forward as a Ghost Rider. But it's always kind of hiding who he really is from Gabe, and then trying to basically be by his side and tend to him as best he can. The issue with this is that in the middle of them driving, where Gabe is kind of hyped and he's excited about the idea of like, go fast, because you are in a Charger. I don't know why you would drive slow. But in the middle of all that, the thing just starts hightailing it, right? Just starts hauling super fast. The difference here is that under normal circumstances and where we had previously seen the car was originally possessed by Eli Morrow, which passed to Robby Reyes, that's not the case anymore, right? Like Robby Reyes is not hearing the voice of Eli Morrow, he's hearing the voice of somebody else instead. And so all this craziness kind of going down here, all these crazy things that are happening, basically all kind of comes to a halt when the car stops. And that's when Robby Reyes sort of begins to panic. And the reason why is because his response is, okay, I don't know what's going on with this thing, right? So he goes to try to trash the car, and then once he gets back to his home, the car's already there. Now the reality is that much like almost all the other Ghost Riders that have existed out there, Robby Reyes doesn't want this, right? He doesn't want to be part of this anymore. But as we know with the Ghost Rider mythos, once you're bonded, you're bonded. There's really no getting out of it. It's really just something you're kind of stuck with forever and ever and ever. There's really no getting out of this whole thing. But he desires to leave the idea of Ghost Rider behind so we can just go back to the life that he had before. That was really always kind of the struggle of his character, right? And so of course, because he's part of the Avengers, he ends up taking it to Avengers Mansion. And this is kind of a cool thing here. When it comes to the idea of like the Midnight Suns, right? This whole, sort of supernatural-esque situation here. While it is part of Marvel Comics, technically it kind of felt like it wasn't, right? It kind of felt like it was out there doing its own thing. Now, of course, you had Johnny Blaze, you had Danny Ketch, of course, who were I guess Danny Ketch, who were parts of the Midnight Suns for a while, but it always kind of felt like it was out doing its own thing. And so when you look at the Midnight Suns for what they were, insofar as like that kind of dark, mysterious side of Marvel Comics, and then you have Robby Reyes showing up to like the Avengers, all of whom were aware of the Midnight Suns and all that kind of stuff. It's a cool little kind of tip of the hat, right? I mean, it's something that you always knew was going on, but it's also kind of cool to see like Black Panther, like, I'm well aware of all this. And Blade, having been part of the Midnight Suns at one point, is like, yeah, like I know how all this stuff works, basically. And so the cool thing about this is that while all this is going on, one of the things that Black Panther does, he says, okay, let's like tap into this car, let's see what kind of energy is there, basically, ham it up, and then see what kind of energy we can pull off of it. But at the same time, I also need to call somebody in. And so when that happens, the car starts to lose its mind, of course, going bonkers and going crazy, and Blade's like shooting at it. Which is kind of a funny thing. Carol Danvers is punching it. I just want to take a second to basically show the Avengers are currently beating up a car. I think that's something that needs to be pointed out here. I should title this. I should make it as the title: The Avengers versus Ghost Rider's car. But nonetheless, the person that Black Panther ended up calling in is Damon Hellstrom. Now, this is something I want to talk about here for a second. When it comes to Marvel Comics, you've got a whole bunch of different hell-ish realms, right? You have the realm where like Satan resides, and then you have like Mephisto, and then you have Hela and her whole realm of hell. But they're basically what are referred to as Hell Lords. When it comes to Hell Lords, each one of these guys are super powerful in their own dimensions, but more so than that, because they are singular dimensions, the Hell Lords can leave their dimensions at any point in time, and they can go into the main Marvel universe. The general consensus across the board is that the longer a Hell Lord stays away from their dimension, the weaker they get. Bringing in somebody like Damon Hellstrom, who's the son of Satan, is kind of a big gamble, because the longer he's here, the weaker he's going to be, and even being out of his own dimension, he's weak. But this is the kind of person that they need insofar as somebody who can basically tap into the mystical side of things, especially when it comes to these realms that involve like Ghost Rider, different characters like that. And so with Damon Hellstrom chiming into this whole thing, it's kind of like, okay, so what you guys basically need here is an exorcism. We're going to exorcise this car and we're going to figure out what's going on. The funny thing about this is that once this exorcism takes place, right, like once Damon Hellstrom basically goes through and starts trying to like summon, you know, whatever spirit is inside this car out of the car itself, which of course is not Eli Morrow, suddenly Robby Reyes and the car are teleported into the realm of hell, and they're met by the arrival of Johnny Blaze. And this is a cool thing here. This is something that I absolutely adore about this, right? Because what goes on with this particular scenario is that when Robby Reyes is talking to Johnny Blaze basically says like, it's the nature of us as Ghost Riders to ride, right? Like it's what we do. Now, the reality of Ghost Riders is to basically punish the wicked. That's really what they're supposed to do. But Johnny Blaze kind of puts himself off as, I need your power in order to keep this realm in check. You're a Ghost Rider. Like you have to be a Ghost Rider. And that's kind of the funny thing is because Robby Reyes tries to reject it, tries to say like, I don't want this. Like I don't want any of this stuff. I don't want to be a Ghost Rider. I don't want to have anything to do with this. And the response to Johnny Blaze is, but like, you don't have a choice. It's what you do. So either you can participate in this race, or I can go to your little brother Gabe. I can take his soul and I can make him a Ghost Rider and he could take your place, right? Because that's kind of how it works. If you were to try to get rid of becoming a Ghost Rider, there's a heavy price to pay, meaning somebody that you care about will take your place. And because the only person out there that Robby Reyes cares about besides himself is Gabe, then it means he'd be sacrificing his little brother to become a Ghost Rider. Now, I think it'd be kind of baller if Gabe were like riding around in like a Hellfire wheelchair, chasing people down. It'd be the most horrifying experience, but it would be, dude, it would be amazing. I would love to see that story where Gabe is just like chasing people down, fire coming out of like his, like a flaming skull on a wheelchair, just like chasing people down. Dude, it'd be pretty awesome. Like it'd be, it'd be pretty baller. But nonetheless, because of the fact that his brother's spirit, essentially his immortal soul is on the line, then ultimately Robby Reyes engages in the chase. Now, this is where things start to get crazy. And the reason why is because this spirit that's possessing this car, we know it's not Eli Morrow, but we don't know who it is. Whoever it is has the power to basically seize control and to resurrect a dead celestial and then start using it for its own means. And that's not something easily achievable, right? Like being able to harness the power of a being of that astronomical strength and then in turn control it is kind of wild here, right? So like whoever that person is, whatever this being is insanely powerful. Not only that, over the course of this race, essentially, while Johnny Blaze isn't really cheating, he is certainly being unfair. Now, this is something that is kind of part and parcel to Johnny Blaze, but at the same time isn't. And the reason why I say that is because Johnny Blaze becoming the King of Hell took place during Damnation, right? The idea that Doctor Strange had accidentally opened up a portal to hell, which allowed Mephisto to invade Earth. And so because the throne of hell was basically empty, Johnny Blaze seized it. And so when Mephisto got back to hell and basically tried to retake his throne, Johnny Blaze basically led an army of like all these Ghost Riders from across time against Mephisto and then ultimately cast him out. And Johnny Blaze has been in control ever since. But Johnny Blaze had done things like freed those individuals who were basically tricked into service of Mephisto or so on and so forth. But basically like, you know, I'm a ruler of hell, but I'm also kind of a good guy too, right? Like he's not a total jerk like Mephisto was. But what you're seeing here with this version of Johnny Blaze, who's basically doing things like pulling out these tricks and essentially like screwing over Robby Reyes from possibly winning and so on and so forth, saying things like, I'll take your little brother's soul and so on and so forth, seems very uncharacteristic of Blaze as we would expect him to be. And the result of that, the explanation that comes out of that comes by way of all these different Ghost Riders that Blaze had used at one point in time in his battle against Mephisto, who still reside in hell. And their response is essentially, the realm of hell has corrupted Johnny Blaze. And so as a result of that, this is basically a darker, more screwed up version of Johnny Blaze. And he effectively is like the new ruler of hell. The other half of this is that once everything kind of pops off with this car, and once Damon Hellstrom kind of casts his spells in order to draw this being out, that of course you have this fiery force that essentially comes out, only to reveal itself to be the cosmic Ghost Rider. So Cosmic Ghost Rider is back now. And this is kind of a funny thing, right? You know, because Cosmic Ghost Rider being here, this is also kind of interesting thing. Cosmic Ghost Rider being here, facing off against Thor, against She-Hulk, and so on and so forth. This is what we call inconsistency. Because you're talking about a guy who basically possesses the power cosmic, right? Like not the entire power of Galactus, but certainly a good portion of it, given the fact that his power was provided to him by Galactus at a time when Thanos had conquered everything. You ended up having a version of Ghost Rider who was imbued with cosmic energy that needed to be powerful enough to be able to take on that future version of Thanos. I don't really understand how this guy could be, you know, comparable to that future version of Thanos and then actually fight alongside him, only to turn around and be just powerful enough to be able to hold his own against She-Hulk and Thor. Not really sure how that whole thing plays out, probably for the sake of storytelling, because then you get cool moments where like Thor basically summons his hammer through the head of Cosmic Ghost Rider and rips Cosmic Ghost Rider head off. And he's like, my head is like a greater man than you'll ever be, and just like blows hellfire in his face. You got these really cool moments. These really cool little segments and so on, but it's just kind of like this great big huge brawl that goes on there. But that's really kind of how things are playing out at the moment, right? You basically got Johnny Blaze, who's essentially like screwing over Robby Reyes with all these crazy things. Once Robby Reyes' car repairs itself and he catches up with Johnny, then Johnny in turn summons this giant celestial that's basically imbued with the spirit of Eli Morrow, who basically starts taunting and destroying the car of Robby Reyes. And while that's going on, Cosmic Ghost Rider is just like going toe to toe with all of the Avengers. It's cool to see, but honestly, I mean, if we're being honest with ourselves, Cosmic Ghost Rider should be able to lay waste to these guys, and it should not be difficult either, right? Like he should do it like and not even by a little bit. But ultimately, as short as this fight is, they all really kind of come to agreement, right? You know, because initially the feeling of Cosmic Ghost Rider is all the Avengers were working for Johnny Blaze, and the reason why was because suddenly, you know, Cosmic Ghost Rider was doing his thing, and then suddenly he was taken by Johnny Blaze and thrown in the car of Robby Reyes, and he's been in it ever since. And so as a result of that, he believed that what the Avengers were doing was trying to keep him confined inside of that car, where Cosmic Ghost Rider was trying to find a way to get himself out. And so once everything kind of comes to a head, once the dust settles and they all realize they're basically on the same side, then the question becomes, if Robby Reyes is stuck in hell with Johnny Blaze, then how do they get him out? Now, Damon Hellstrom could possibly get them there, but there's no guarantee. Instead, Cosmic Ghost Rider basically says, I'm the one that can get you guys in there. Right? Like, I'm the one that can get you guys in there and get you guys out. And in truth, it makes sense. When you're talking about a being who's astronomically powerful, because he possesses the power cosmic, he can enter and go in and out of any dimension that he so chooses. And so that's kind of what goes down here. The Cosmic Ghost Rider ends up bringing in all the Avengers who are like traveling on this giant skiff, more or less. Which is pretty cool. Ultimately, they all just kind of end up taking on Johnny Blaze. Now, here's something that I want to point out to you guys is the power Johnny Blaze possesses and how it's augmented in the realm of hell. Johnny Blaze, and this is one of the things that people kind of tend to forget about tried and true Ghost Riders. Someone like Johnny Blaze, who is a tried and true Ghost Rider possessed by the spirit of vengeance, is insanely powerful. You know, if somebody like Johnny Blaze walked upon Galactus and like used the penance stare on him, it would turn Galactus's world upside down. And I think he has. I'm not going to swear to that, but I believe he has. But like Ghost Rider is insanely powerful, right? Like it's no small thing for Ghost Rider to face off against some of the biggest heavy hitters like Worldbreaker Hulk and things like that, right? So he's not a small guy. When you take the power of Ghost Rider and then you amplify it based on the realm of hell, it becomes even greater. And that's why stories like this are cool, but at the same time, it doesn't quite seem to add up. Because when you're taking somebody like Johnny Blaze, who is that powerful, who fashions his own hammer of Thor, right? Like he literally recreates Thor's hammer and then uses it, you would expect him to just kind of trounce the entirety of the Avengers. Maybe there's some magical protection there, but for the most part, these guys should all be decimated. Now, the great thing about stories like this and what you kind of have to do going into it is just suspend disbelief. I mean, after all, we are talking about comic books, right? So you kind of have to suspend that disbelief and just roll with the story for what it is, which is what I do these days. I don't get too hung up anymore. Like, here's the thing. If I was like 17 years old when this story came out, I would be like, this is ridiculous. You know, there's no way the Avengers would win. And I'd like rage on forums and all that kind of stuff. These days, it's just like, this is amazing. This is an awesome fight, and I like it. And I just kind of roll with it from there. But still, you know, for the most part, it all really kind of comes down to Robby Reyes. And this is where really Jason Aaron kind of jumps into the cleanup duty, right? Where it's kind of like, okay, so what's the deal with Robby Reyes really? Now, Robby Reyes essentially has all the powers of the Ghost Rider, right? He's got the pin and stare, he's got all these abilities and so on and so forth. He drives a Charger, which is really, really cool. But the idea is like, where does he stand with all this? Does he want to be a Ghost Rider? Does he not want to be a Ghost Rider? How does all this work? And what ends up happening here is Robby Reyes basically comes to terms with the role he plays. That if he's a Ghost Rider, then he's a Ghost Rider, right? Like that's just kind of the way it is. There's no real casting this off. He just kind of accepts that he's just another member in a long legacy here. Now, this seems like a small thing, or it seems kind of like, okay, you know, didn't really seem like you need a whole story about that. You can do a one shot, and to a degree, you're probably right. But the reason why this matters is because what it does is it goes forward with Robby Reyes just like being the Ghost Rider. Jason Aaron can basically put this whole thing behind him, everything that's happened since the beginning of all new Ghost Rider up until now. He can kind of put all that and say, okay, like we've done this, you know, we can go ahead and put this story away, we can close this chapter of the book. Now let's tell stories with Robby Reyes as part of the Avengers. It works. It's a really, really smart maneuver. It's a really good thing to do. But you see this happen all the time when it comes to these kind of ensemble books, but I think it's great for the character of Robby because now we get to see him kind of full on go in and go forward and do his own thing. But the other big takeaway from this is that there was a point in the story when Okoye of Wakanda had basically brought in Thor and She-Hulk. Now, of course, all that took place before everything popped off with Cosmic Ghost Rider and whatnot, but basically said, hey, look, we were going through this cave. This cave was basically discovered during the War of Realms and so on and so forth. What we found in this cave was this Iron Man helmet, which seems to be like 1,000,000 years old, right? Like this super old Iron Man helmet. We don't know how it got there. We don't really know what's going on with this whole thing. And so what you end up getting is this sort of scenario where Iron Man has been investigating this cave the entire time, hence the reason he hasn't been here. And so as he goes through there and as he's been analyzing all these energy signatures, what he ends up doing is waking something up. And inside this helmet, it simply just says Regé Mephisto. And then like suddenly Iron Man's teleported away to 1,000,000 years in the past. And basically that's where he is at the moment. Iron Man is 1,000,000 years in the past, which is cool because here's the question I have. Here's the question I want to know. The comic that comes after this is Starbrand, but then you also get the Ghost Rider from 1,000,000 years ago. My question is, what's Iron Man's involvement going to be in like that Ghost Rider in the Avengers, right? Because we know he's not the Ghost Rider. We already have the story of that character for the most part. But I'm curious to see like what that story is going to be and how that story is going to play out. I want to see Iron Man team up with the Avengers from 1,000,000 BC. That's going to be really cool. But with that being said, guys, we're going to bring this video to an end. If you are new here to Comics Explained, make sure you guys hit the sub button to become part of the Rob Corps. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like. And yeah, I will catch you all later. Peace.